My talk is going to be around an Android distribution and a tool I've developed to defeat forensics analysis and seizure of Android devices, as well as make it more useful for operational security purposes. So in theory, this is how the talk's going to go. There's going to be a very, very short OPSEC refresher course, so people can see why I have done the things that I have done, other than being crazy. I will go over why phones suck, because they suck. There's quite a lot to get through there. Then I will go over the threat model that I was using while I developed the phone. Basically, it's very important to understand what the phone is supposed to defeat, otherwise you might use it in the wrong way. There's a variety of solutions that I will look at. Pretty much all of them suffer in some way, shape, or form. And even though it says conclusion, there actually isn't one, but there is a demo. This is my About Me slide. I like long walks on the beach, hacking things, and clandestine cellular networks, such as spy rings, espionage, terrorists, and criminal organizations. Because who doesn't, right? Okay, so operational security, the short version. Everyone ready? Shut the fuck up. Any questions? No? So here's another good one, which is if you want to lose a fight, talk about it first. Historically, operational security stuff used to be referred to as denial and deception. These days it's considered something of an archaic term, but I still like D&D. It covers a lot of what you need to be doing if you are, for example, not a government agency. Government agencies have a lot more resources and a lot more things to worry about. As individuals or small groups, primarily you need to work on denial, just making sure no one knows what you're doing. So the point of a denial operation or of following denial-based OPSEC is to limit the amount of what's called essential elements of friendly information, or EEFI. These are things that are critical to your operation to prevent these pieces of information from becoming available to your adversary. Usually after the operation is over, they cease to be important and then they can come out again. Obviously that depends a lot on what you're doing, but generally speaking, if you don't talk about it, you're fairly well off. Deception is more complicated. The idea is that you are providing false information to the adversary. Generally speaking, with a deception operation, the best way to approach it is to allow the adversary to discover the information in their normal course of events. So while they're doing their regular stuff, they will uncover the false information. That will allow them to piece together the picture on their own, and they will have a much stronger belief in it than if you hand it to them directly on a platter. Right? If you hand it to them, they get suspicious, but if they discover it, they're more likely to believe it. Let them figure it out for themselves. More importantly, during an operation, there are the 3 C's, cover, concealment, and compartmentation. So the idea with cover is it provides a plausible reason for some action to be taking place. There's 2 kind of important ones. The first is cover for action. So that is a reason why you are doing something. And the other one is cover for status, which is a reason why you are in a particular location or why you are able to do something in particular. These are not very important with phones, but remember that cover tends to be very, very important. It allows people to build a narrative that explains why something is going on. And if the mental narrative that they construct matches what they're expecting, what they actually find, then they will tend to overlook it. Concealment is fairly straightforward. You just want to hide things, make it hard for people to find. And compartmentation is so that when it all fucks up, at least it's not a complete catastrophe. So the point of compartmentation is that you limit the scope of any one failure to a small subset of data or information or operations, so that in theory, even if it is compromised, it is not a complete and total failure. In practice, compartmentation tends to be quite difficult to work with, and people are lazy. Which brings us to the next thing is compartmentation cannot be complete, otherwise nothing would ever work. So you end up with the fact that people must communicate. And when people communicate, they tend to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, the NSA is there. So let's get rid of phones. Phones suck. Unfortunately, there are obviously not a lot of alternatives, but the important thing to remember is that a mobile phone and operational security really do not go together well. Alan Dulles pointed this out in the 50s with the point that the greatest material curse to the profession, that being spying, despite all of its advantages, is undoubtedly the telephone. All right? And this was him hating on the fact that there were people with phones in their houses. Right? Imagine how pissed off he would be to find out that everyone's carrying a phone actually with them. The main problem with mobile phones is that there's absolutely no way of being anonymous. Right? The best you can possibly hope for is pseudonymity. And the reason for that is they are tracking devices. That is fundamentally what they do. They have a smart card that is tied specifically to one identity. They, like when they make phone calls, they give out all of your location information. When you move around, they give out all of your location information. Basically, everyone that has a smartphone can be tracked by the telcos. Everyone that can be tracked by the telcos can be tracked by the government. Everyone that can be tracked by the government can be tracked by Five Eyes, because Five Eyes hacks all the telcos. So mobile phones basically mean that everyone knows where you are, where everyone being your adversary. There's a lot of problems with mobiles. I'm going to just basically go into all of the things that can be used to identify a mobile. So you have a specific location, right? So if a mobile gets turned on in your home or at your work, it's immediately tied to the subset of people that have access to that location. There's mobility patterns. So if a mobile goes from your home over your commuter route to your work, that uniquely identifies that phone as being yours, because no one else is going to take that route. Basically, you only need 4 tower locations to identify 90% of people uniquely, based only on home, commuter route, and work. Right? Mirroring is what happens when you have more than one telephone turned on at the same time, and they travel together. They will have the same mobility pattern. So if you have a phone that you use regularly, and it has now been identified as yours, and then you have your second cheap burner phone or your anonymous phone, and you carry both of them together, they will get paired together because of mirroring. So you will have burned the anonymity of that second device. Right? This also allows building up social graphs by having if there's a large number of people that come together with their mobile phones and then travel in a car somewhere and then stay at the same location and then split up, you can assume that that group of people has gotten together, gone somewhere for a drink, and then left. They are a social group. They're tied together. If that happens repeatedly, even if they never call each other or they use other means of connecting with each other, you can start pairing them together and creating social networks from that. So mirroring is very bad. You have to be very careful about having devices turned on at the same time in the same place, particularly for traveling. So that's just location. The next part is the network. Networks can completely screw you. So the numbers that you dial, the people that call you, and the calling patterns that you have can all uniquely identify you. So even if you swap out your phone, but none of your mates do, you will still be uniquely identified because you're the only person that has that set of people that phone them, get phone calls from them, and do it in a particular pattern. So you might call your friend all the time, but your mother only occasionally. That would be something that uniquely identifies you. So calling patterns will actually make it very, very obvious who you are. Then there's the actual physical identifiers on the phone, which is the IMEI, which is the unique serial number of the mobile device, and the IMSI, which is the unique serial number of the SIM card. It's usually a combination of your home country, your telco network, and your phone number in some way, plus some other identifying information. So IMSI is very bad. It basically links a SIM card directly to a database in a telco. IMEI is very bad because if they get paired together, swapping out SIM cards doesn't actually help you because they can, again, match those together. So physically, devices are very easy to identify. And when you're speaking to someone, again, you can be identified. If you use names or locations, that can be picked up because it's all in plain text and not encrypted. There's voice fingerprinting, so they can actually just match on the fingerprint of your voice how it has a unique pattern. And keywords, so if they're just looking for specific keywords that you end up saying, you can also get matched on that. So content completely fucks you. And this is with a dumb phone. Smartphones, on the other hand, are way worse, right? Smartphones have ad network analytics. They've got GPS devices. They've got all these apps that scrape and upload your entire mobile phone content. They've got mothership pings where they will periodically just ping back home to announce that they're still alive. If you're using an Android phone, it will have a unique Android ID. They have a MAC address. They will have an IP address. They will have a list of all of the Wi-Fi beacons that they've ever seen or that they've associated with or that are around them. They've got cameras, they've got microphones, and they've got sensors that allow them to do gait analysis. Basically, smartphones are the devil, right? They are absolutely terrible if you're trying to be anonymous. So with that out of the way, what I was concerned about when I was trying to make a safe one was a specific threat model. And my specific threat model was local security forces. Local security forces tend not to have the same resources as a national security force. In particular, they do not have nation-state actor level resources behind them. So while they might be able to see the contents of your phone, they will not necessarily be able to query globally all of the telco data, right? They might not be able to talk to a telco and get complete information about that. This was specifically because I was asked to do this project for Al Jazeera, and they have had problems with putting reporters in Syria. And that's where you get to deal with like gentlemen like this. So one of the issues that they had was that their reporters got arrested by militiamen who had searched them and had found a Huawei 3G access device, like one of those little things that you turn on and it creates an access point. And the militiamen had never seen something like this. But what happened when they turn it on is they see it start going, connecting to internet, satellite located, broadcasting Wi-Fi, and they decided that quite logically this must be some sort of CIA spying device, and they arrested both of the reporters. And then Al Jazeera had to go and send a bunch of people to negotiate the release. So one of the things that we had to worry about as our threat model is that our phone cannot look weird. Right? Anything that looks weird is going to be assumed to be a spy device. And this is part of cover. So it can't be a suspicious thing. So it has to be a device that a militiaman from Anbar province who has grown up in a tiny village and has only ever seen billboards will recognize as a normal device, which is why I've gone for the Nexus 5 and the Samsung S4 and things like that. But it's important to remember this is not against the NSA, because it's not going to work against the NSA. The other problem we have, so we have our threat model, but we also have users. And the problem, of course, is that security is hard work. It's painful to do it properly all of the time. And it takes discipline. And you have to make sure that you do the same things correctly in the same order consistently, otherwise you're going to have problems. And the problem with that, of course, is that users are lazy. But, so are we. So it has to be made easy to use, such as there's nothing you can adjust, right? There's no knobs, it just works. It has to be secure by default because they're not going to configure it. They don't know how to do that properly. And it has to be reasonably good because if the defaults are too strong, they're not going to use it. And if it's not strong enough, it's not going to help. So we have to kind of strike a balance there. All right, now to completely switch track. Burner phones. This might be a solution, right? All you need to do is buy a really cheap phone and then you can use that. Now you might be wondering, what is a burner phone good for? Well, specifically burner phones are good for threat actors that do not have nation-state level capabilities. For example, your mom. They are good for fleshing out a non-operational legend. So if you're creating a persona that is not going to be used in a situation that needs to have any sort of protection, you can use a burner phone that will allow you to have a number that can be called. Right? So they're kind of good for that, but definitely not for the NSA. Right? They're pretty useless at stopping the NSA. Anyway, you're probably going to use them. So this is what you should do. Basically, most of this stuff, or actually all of it, is taken from this guy's blog, and I have no idea who he is because he's got good OPSEC. So I'm misappropriating it, and he can get in touch with me if he has a problem. When you're buying a burner phone, the dumber, the better. Right? I particularly like the Nokia 1280 because it has a week of battery life when it's up, and it has an LED flashlight that you can use, and it also has an FM radio if you're bored, and it can make phone calls. You need to learn how to actually turn the thing off properly. What that really means is you have to take the SIM card out, and you have to remove the battery. Right? You have to completely turn it off. Anywhere that you're going to be around a location that is linked with you, as we went over, you need to make sure that it's in a disabled state. So never turn it on at home. When you are loading it up with information, never ever put in real info. Don't put in actual contact information. Don't fill it in with any information that is legitimately tied to you or people that you know in any way. Similarly, if you want to put in fake information, go for it. That's a good idea. That provides a nice cover. And it will provide some evidence that people can look at that will distract them later on. While you are using it, you probably want to also call non-operational numbers. So not just the people that you're trying to get in contact with, but random other people, to create a call tree that's not actually a unique map tied to you. So you basically want to chaff the analysis a little bit. You want to keep it very short, you want to keep it very simple, and you want to get rid of it as soon as possible. So don't keep it around for longer than you need it. When you're buying it, purchase it in cash, get it from a smaller store. One of the big things that screws up an analysis or an investigation is time deltas. So the longer that you can wait between purchase and use, the better. Try and aim for a minimum of 2 months, but long is also good. The longer you wait, the harder it is for them to backtrack and go to the store and get information on that. And when you dispose of it with extreme prejudice. So get the hammer out and smash that motherfucker up. Okay. I also have a section on how to do clandestine phone calls. And the reason you want that is because if you do it wrong, you can get blown up. Probably only if you're a Yemeni goat herder or attending a Yemeni wedding. So as we said, the problem with phones is they are always on location trackers with audio-visual sensors, environmental sensors, they link to a smart card identity, and you carry it around with you everywhere you go. They're fucking terrible. So the important thing with the clandestine phone call is to have a plan before you start it out, to actually know what you're going to say, have thought about it beforehand. Don't be too specific, don't be too elaborate, don't make it too forced. Try and make the whole thing sound natural. Again, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it natural. Whenever possible, prefer signaling over operational data. So signaling is if you say to someone, I will call you and then we should meet tomorrow at 12 o'clock. You call them, you just say, hi, it's me, and then you can hang up because that's all you needed to do. You don't need to provide any additional operational information. So signaling is better. If you can't do signaling, prefer open codes. Open codes are where you basically just have word substitutions. And one of the important things with open codes is it's called a modulus, but it's not really. What you do is you, for example, if I say, I will meet you tomorrow at 8 p.m., I will meet you on Friday at 8 p.m., you subtract 1 day and 1 hour. You subtract 6 hours and add 1 day, right? So you have a very, very simple algorithm that's used to modify any date and time that the other party can use so that if it is overheard, it will be the wrong information that is captured. These open codes can be very, very effective in a lot of cases. One thing not to do is very, very stupid open codes, such as, I would like to order 2 green sweaters and make sure there aren't any fucking seeds this time. And when you go in, once again, make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know what you're doing, all right? And of course, even if you do all this correctly, the other guy might fuck it up. So make sure that you tell him beforehand so that he doesn't go, oh, tomorrow at 3, oh, you mean 5 at the park, see you then. All right, that can go very badly. So those are the things that you should do when you're making phone calls. In general, I would suggest against making phone calls for operational reasons. Some of the things that people have come up with to make secure phones, these like fortress phones where it's going to like stop the NSA, they don't really work very well, but we'll go over them anyway. So there's actually NSA guidelines on how to have a secure phone, which is quite useful because they published it and we can copy it, and fundamentally their guidelines are very, very sound. So everything has to have at least 2 forms of encryption. So if you've got FDE, like basically all of your data at rest has to be encrypted. So full disk encryption, but then every application has to have its own encryption on top of that. So you have 2 sets of encryption. So if one set of keys is compromised, in theory you at least have the second set to protect you. For data in motion, it's the same thing. You need to have a base level of encryption and then the application to do encryption as well on top of that. So this is very easy. You have a VPN and then you have your app level encryption on top of that. So it's pretty straightforward to mimic. We can do this with all open source stuff, which is cool. But you can't really do it with Android, right? And there's a reason that you cannot have a secure Android phone. Number 1, it is a phone. Number 2, it is Android. Basically, the fundamental problem with Android is it is the product of a mass surveillance ad agency, and they are not your friend. So they have gone to extreme lengths to embed a lot of stuff that allows them to monitor what their phone is doing. And that phone will report quite a lot of stuff back by default, even if you go to extreme lengths to make sure that you always opt out of the things like back up my data, which is shorthand for upload all of my data in plain text to your servers because I don't care about privacy. The important thing to remember is that Leos love Android. Android is absolutely terrible for you. It generates a huge amount of data. It uploads pretty much all of it to Google, which means that even if your phone is secure, the data itself is not because it's available with subpoena. And it is fundamentally just a Linux box that is always connected to the internet that you cannot lock down in any way. And you might be thinking, but what if I install Text Secure? No, you cannot bolt on security. You cannot make Android better by adding apps. But what if I add more? No, you cannot make Android better by bolting on apps. It doesn't work. What you have to do is you have to start over from scratch completely and build a ROM that is designed to be secure from the beginning. Several people have done this. So there's Blackphone. Blackphone is by Silent Circle. It is coming out fairly soon, and it's for people with money. Like, it costs $600 for the phone, plus $100 a year for a subscription to their services, which you need in order to have the secure texting, the secure calling, and obviously it only works with other people who also have Black phones or other Silent Circle apps. So if you and all of your friends are rich, one of these is probably a good way to go. There's Samsung Knox, which is for people who do not actually want a secure phone. So if the problem is that you want a phone that will have your work email, that will be encrypted separately from your home email, and that will allow you to be PCI compliant, get a Samsung Knox. You'll be fine. You can check the box on PCI compliance. I'm sure TrustWave would be happy to help you with that. And once you get owned, you can say, but I was, yeah. Anyway, Knox is absolutely crap. The threat model is basically, I lost my phone, gee, I hope my email was encrypted. There is an open source ROM that was created for the Nexus 4 and one other model, I think the S3, but I might be wrong on that. So the Guardian ROM, basically it has a modified version of the volume mounter that has a TrueCrypt-like inner and outer volume built into it. In order to access the inner volume or the outer volume, you have to reboot the phone and type in your password again. So if you like to reboot phones, get the Guardian ROM. Then there's the one that I've built, which basically it's very, very hacky right now. It hasn't been polished a lot. So if you want to do everything yourself, and then at least you'll know where you stand, go ahead and get Cryptogen Mod. I would point out the name is subject to change depending on whether they sue me or not. As you might have guessed, it is a derivative of Cyanogen Mod. And you might be asking, so is that NSA proof? Not so much. All right. All is lost. Well, we're not actually completely fucked. We can kind of do some things, which is why we've got Cryptogen Mod. So it's the hardened Android ROM that I've developed, and I am going to run through my presentation way too quickly. Right. So basically, when I started out with Cryptogen Mod, the idea was to develop a phone that would be able to defeat local security forces. So the idea was not to develop a phone that would have significant protections against analysis from the telco side, but primarily from the physical access side. So if someone seizes your device, it needs to be robust against those attacks. As a result, there is quite a lot of crypto that goes on, like more crypto is better. It kind of screws up the usability a little bit. Like we figured out that you need a minimum of 7 passwords in order to operate it securely. We're working on reducing that a little bit, but We think at 7 passwords, there's some slight chance there'll be a little bit of reuse on the passwords there. As I said, it's robust against physical attacks. The resilience against network attacks is primarily that we don't want people to remotely own our phone. And the easiest way to do that is to just get rid of everything that's remotely ownable. And also impact containment. As I said, compartmentation is a critical part of having a secure phone. The way I've approached impact containment is to limit the amount of information that is available to any application that's installed on the phone. In theory, that should limit the amount of information that someone can get if they install malware on your phone. In practice, probably not, but at least we tried. So it's a derivative of Cyanogen Mod. Cyanogen Mod is pretty cool because they've stripped out a whole lot of Google stuff already, which makes my job easier. I got rid of even more of the Google stuff. So the email client doesn't work. The browser doesn't work. The camera doesn't work. No, these are good things, trust me. I implied the OpenPDroid patches. OpenPDroid allows you to have very, very locked down information available via the APIs in the framework. So when someone says, give me a list of all the contacts, OpenPDroid goes, here you go, it's empty, what a shock. And it does that for everything. So when someone says, what is my IP address? It goes, you're at 127.0.0.1. And if someone says, give me the MAC address, it goes 222.222.222.222, etc. So it's very good at limiting the amount of information that can be scraped by any particular application. And I'm hoping that things like Hacking Team's malware is going to use the Android APIs rather than directly reading from the disk. But we'll see. And then I've installed secure replacements. So we're using Whisper Push, which comes by default with the phone. Unfortunately, Whisper Push requires the Google Play framework, and I do not like Google. So it doesn't quite work right now. It's the same thing with Red Phone. We're going to have to figure out a way around that. So currently, the only thing that actually works is the PGP email client, which is great because the only thing that this phone is supposed to do is provide secure communications over PGP email. And I meant it to be like that as opposed to accidentally broke everything. There's also a bunch of tweaks that I've done to harden the kernel. So things that I have done include adding more encryption options. So the default settings for the kernel tend not to be very good. I've stripped out support for things I don't like, such as NFC and Bluetooth. And I've also added basically tripwires so that if there's any access to, for example, the UART, if someone tries to attach a debugger, the kernel will automatically panic. Or if someone tries to attach to the debug port over the line in, it will automatically panic. So it won't allow any serial access to itself. So the kernel has been hardened there. There's a lot more to be done. I've got a subset of the GRSec patches, but I have not successfully applied them and gotten it to boot. Someday soon. The userland has been hardened, again, primarily by removing things. There's a lot more to be done. What I'm most interested in doing is getting rid of DL malloc and replacing it with a hardened version of like the JL malloc or the JE malloc, whatever the dude's name is. And that would make the phone fundamentally more robust against heap overflow attacks. Although, again, as I said, the only thing that actually works is OpenVPN and the PGP client, Tor, and Chat Secure. So there's quite a lot of protections actually built into the phone by itself. Things against local physical access, things against remote hacking, things against baseband hacking, not so much. Network monitoring, a little bit, and GSM monitoring, not so much. Our primary concern with physical access is people doing forensics analysis And all of the security there is built around encryption and what I call the security ratchet, although I should come up with a much better name. So the security ratchet is this awesome thing that detects changes to the operational environment and automatically hardens the phone for you. More on that later. Remotely, what we've got is a very, very reduced attack surface. And we achieve this by stripping out the browser. Like, if you're using Android, fundamentally, your number one exposure is the browser. WebKit is where you're going to get owned. And if it's not WebKit, it's going to be over your email, which will also use WebKit, and will use like HTML views or web views to view things. That's bad. And I also got rid of the app stores, because if you allow users to install things, they will, and that will fuck everything up, because that's what users do. So I removed the ability to alter the device in any way. So that basically covers you locally and remotely. In terms of baseband attacks, there's not much I can do without developing my own phone from scratch, which I am not going to do. You can use Portal, so you disable the GSM completely and only use Wi-Fi access to a separate device that would then provide Tor-only access, and that would have its own GSM stack, which would connect out to the network, and that would give you an air gap between your phone and the network, right? That's one thing you can do. It is a little bit bulky in terms of carrying it around, but it's very, very secure. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. The other thing to remember is that even though baseband attacks are a threat, it's not actually the end of the world. Baseband attacks are kind of finicky. Like they're not very reliable all the time, because it's very, very dependent on the version of the firmware that you have, and that's hard to fingerprint. And they also depend very much on the design of the baseband. So if the baseband was designed correctly, where it actually is properly segmented from the rest of the phone, in theory it's not the end of the world, because the only thing that you are doing is using the phone to get internet access. So it only ever sees encrypted traffic anyway. In practice, of course, a lot of basebands are badly designed, and if you're at the baseband, you can do read access to the rest of the phone's memory, which kind of screws encryption badly. So basebands, there's not much we can do. Use a portal, and that solves that issue. In terms of network monitoring and GSM monitoring, there's nothing we can do about GSM monitoring, because you are on the GSM network, except again using a portal. In terms of network monitoring, if you're using a VPN so that you only ever connect to a single back end, you are secure for monitoring there, because you're encrypted and there's no pattern that can be matched. You're not leaving a lot of metadata. So VPN's good. And it also automatically gives us our dual layer of encryption. So there's quite a lot of things in there that make the phone automatically more robust. Of course, you have to be smart as well. Like, you need to employ your OPSEC, because even if you've got an encrypted phone, if you automatically use it to tell people where you are, it's not going to help you. So yeah, secure phones can't cure stupid. So that was Cryptogen Mod. The other thing I did was I created an application called Dark Matter. So Dark Matter creates a set of secure application containers. So these are encrypted containers that applications run from. And it also ensures that there's a secure operational environment that the phone is running in. So the encrypted app containers are basically, it's TrueCrypt, right? So we have a mobile version of TrueCrypt, which allows you to create a TrueCrypt volume on your phone. It will, when you mount your volume, it automatically kills all of your sensitive applications. It will bind mount them into your TrueCrypt volume, and then when you restart them, all of the data will appear inside of the TrueCrypt volume. So this gives you a second layer of encryption, right? So everything that's running is now running out of a TrueCrypt volume, because TrueCrypt for Android is kind of broken. There's one version of it that you can get with an app called Kryptonite. The TrueCrypt sources use Fuse and the FAT file system. So FAT we all know is crap. Fuse is actually really terrible. There is a problem where if you unmount a Fuse, like a TrueCrypt Fuse file system, it actually only unmounts the mount point, but the temporary location where it has mounted it initially is left open. What that means is if you open a TrueCrypt volume and then close it, all of the data is still left there completely accessible until you reboot the device, right? It is the opposite of useful. So I used an application called TC Play, which was written for, I think, Dragonfly BSD, but possibly NetBSD. It's completely open source. It has no backdoors as far as anyone knows. The only connection it has with TrueCrypt is that it uses the TrueCrypt file format, which is not a great file format, but at least it's interoperable with other things, and it gives you that inner and outer container. So, yes. As I don't know if it works for the PC as well. I suspect it doesn't, but it definitely does on Android. So it's the guy that modified TrueCrypt to run on Android wrote a bunch of patches where he hard-coded a bunch of things just in order to get it to compile. So he just went through and he was like, yeah, if def, whatever, d, put in the path here, boom, 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 great, done. And somehow he ended up with the result that TrueCrypt doesn't actually unmount. So if you get a phone and you see the TrueCrypt binary on there, look under SD card, Android data, csh.kryptonite.net / there'll be a .temp directory, and inside there you will find all of the mount directories where the TrueCrypt data is available. You can also see that if you just type mount, because they will show up, right? It's pretty horrible. So the awesome thing about TC Play is it uses dmcrypt, which is the device mapper. So it's actually all done in kernel. So it's not done in user land, which makes it a lot faster. Because it's done in the kernel, it makes it a lot less broken. And because it's also done in the kernel with a device mapper that allows you to use real file systems. So you can use ext4 instead of FAT. And FAT actually doesn't work very well for Linux applications when they're trying to save data and so on, because you can't set the permissions properly, whereas ext4 is absolutely fine. And obviously you could do things like add ricerfs, and that would allow you to kill your wife with your phone. One person claps for killing their wife. Okay. And you might be wondering, but why don't I just use the shitty AES-128 CBC that comes with Android anyway, and why would I use the far superior AES-256 SCS mode that comes with TrueCrypt? The answer is, fuck it, use both. Why not? Make them work for it. Having both sets of encryption doesn't add a massive amount of slowing down because most Android apps are not I/O bound. They don't spend a lot of time writing back and forth up and down the encryption stack. Of course, one of the other things that is important to notice is that the basic /data encryption that you can get with Android is tied to your unlock PIN code or your unlock passcode. So if you want to have a secure /data encryption, and you also want to have a relatively easy to use PIN unlock code, you need to use another application which will wrap around the VDC command, which is the volume disk controller or something like that. And that will allow you to change the boot password to unlock your /data. So I've included that on the phone because you really do need to have a secure boot password, because that's what's going to get ground by like when they start doing brute force, that's what they're going to be brute forcing. And if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not going to last very long. So for us, because of our physical phone security and the amount of encryption we have, there are a very, very small number of win states that we need to get to. Basically, as soon as one of our encrypted containers is closed, we win. And that's very, very easy for us. All we need to do is shut down one of the containers, and now someone has to brute force a TrueCrypt password, which is a lot more difficult than the AES password that gets used on the boot time encryption, because that's not actually very well protected. And of course, a shutdown or a reboot counts as well. So if we can get the phone to shut down, we win. All right? So those are our encrypted containers. What makes this particularly awesome is that there is event-based hardening. So not only do we have encrypted containers, but our phone actually monitors and adapts our security posture based on changes within the operational environment. So it will detect when people are trying to do nasty things or when there are indicators of nasty things, and it will automatically harden itself. What this comes down to is it's monitoring for security events. When there are security events, it will trigger security actions. Pretty straightforward, right? So there's a few things that we look for in particular that we treat as indicators of a negative operational environment. These are if there is a failed login attempt. So if someone has access to your phone and they put in the wrong PIN, this will automatically unmount everything. It will shut your encrypted containers. It will also kill all of your applications, and you get to restart them. And if they're password protected, you have to add those in as well. So this gives us a very, very easy way of triggering a encrypted container close. We can reach a win state simply by putting in the incorrect PIN. There's also timers. So right now the timer is set to 10 hours, I believe. So if no one logs in successfully within 10 hours, it will automatically lock the phone down. The reason this is useful is in the majority of cases, unless you are a high-value target, your phone is just going to go on the stack until someone gets around to looking at it. That can be a week or more. We also detect a temperature drop. So if the phone starts going down towards freezing for over 1 hour, then it will automatically unmount. And the reason for this is that cold boot attacks on Android are currently done by throwing the phone in the freezer. So we detect that. We also detect radio silence, which is if there is no GSM connection and no Wi-Fi connection, we assume that you're in a Faraday bag. If you're in a Faraday bag, you've been seized and you're going to be forensically analyzed, we shut down. I mentioned there were the modifications to the kernel, which detect when there's a debugger that's been attached. If there's a debugger attached via any of the physical ports, the kernel panics, we reboot or we shut down, and that's a win. So we also can receive alerts. So if we receive an alert SMS, we will shut down and reboot. That's a win. So for us, if someone forensically seizes your phone, they put it in a Faraday bag, we detect that, we shut down, we win. If they go, aha, I know about this, no Faraday bag for you, we can now send an alert SMS and shut down and win. If they go, I'm not falling for that one, I'll just take the SIM card out. Well, we detect that, we shut down, we win, right? Like there's basically no way of accessing the phone without having your password, which means the phone is about as hard as it can get, up to you. So those are the events that it's monitoring for. Some of them are done with third-party applications right now. I am paying a guy who writes the Java code because I refuse to write Java for religious reasons. And thank you. I've seen the light. Basically, he is not as motivated as he should be because I've been a little bit late in paying him because he has not been as motivated as he should be. So the beatings will continue until morale improves. One of us has to give. The things that we do that harden the security posture are we kill all of the sensitive applications. Right now, that's a hard-coded list. So it means whisper push, text secure, red phone, your R2 mail 2, and your chat secure. So these are things that would have information in memory that would be useful. We kill those. We unmount the TrueCrypt file system. So that gets closed. We can also wipe files. So if the security ratchet gets to a certain level, we would be able to completely erase the TrueCrypt volume container. So that wouldn't be there for someone to see afterwards. It's built in right now that it has a RAM wipe. So as soon as it's killed everything, it will also wipe RAM in the hopes that it will erase any memory that has like decryption keys or passwords still left in it. I tried to modify Dalvik so that whenever it frees an object, it would mem set it to 0, but I could not make that work. And then I assumed, fuck it, I'll just add an application instead. It's also possible to reboot the phone, but since we've pretty much done all of that, there's no point in having a reboot at this point in time. Before I get to the demo, a quick note on duress codes. So people have asked, like, why don't you have a duress code that you could key in a specific pin and it would automatically do bad things to your phone? The reason for that is that when you have a duress code, it doesn't work. Because you're going to say to someone, here are 2 pin numbers. One you're going to use all of the time, and this other one you're only going to use when you're under extreme stress. Don't get them confused and don't forget it, right? That doesn't work. People forget it. During World War II, the radio operators that were actually trained on how to do duress code stuff would still screw it up occasionally. And these were people who are trained. These are not like random reporters doing stuff. Additionally, with the duress code, what tends to happen is when you use the wrong code, you have extreme punishment, right? So when there's a duress code for an alarm at your house, when you put in the wrong number, the police show up. And then you get a huge bill from the alarm company. So it's not generally a very good thing. Blah, 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 blah. They don't work. Are there any questions on duress codes? No? Okay. Now the demo. Can everyone see that at the back? Yeah? Okay. Now I'm going to unlock. Yeah? No? Yeah, I made a video. So that's my super secret PIN number. Here's my chat secure. It's got a white background. Here's my R2 mail 2. R2 mail 2 is a PGP client. We open up dark matter. We enter our super secret password. Don't look. Yeah. Now we open R2 mail 2 again. And because it's running from inside the encrypted container, it will have a black background because it has a different set of settings. So that's a visual cue to us to know that we're in a secure state. It's the same thing for chat secure. We can close dark matter, which will close the encrypted containers. You can see we're back to white, blah, blah, blah. So white, yes, nothing up my sleeves. Once again, don't look. The password is not password 1. Blah, 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 blah. I type a lot faster in real life when there isn't a camera directly in front of my face. Now we close, and if we log in incorrectly, oh no, Mr. Militiaman, I fat-fingered the password. My bad. Oh, look at that. Our encrypted containers have been unmounted, and we are back to our decoy state. So that gives us a very, very easy duress code in that the only thing you need to remember is do not use the correct PIN number, and you're safe. Yeah? That's the easiest possible duress code. So, fuck yeah. Cryptogen Mod plus dark matter, pure fucking win. And it's open source. You can go and get it on GitHub as soon as I take this not private, which will happen after this. And the important thing is that this, while it will not actually defeat the NSA, it will make it more expensive. So you can hit them where it counts. Probably. Until they adapt. So what motivated this was that, as we know, journalists are being hit very heavily by nation-state actors that want to access the information that they've been collecting. We have known this for a while. They're starting to figure this out. And so Al Jazeera contacted me to help them with a device that would protect them against this. And they had one condition, that it was made available for everyone, because they want everyone to be using a secure phone. So they've decided that if there's a strong baseline of security for everyone, we all benefit. So thank you, Al Jazeera. Are there any questions?
This doesn't seem to address the initial problem, which is the Al Jazeera team going in with spying equipment initially, and this doesn't have Angry Birds on it and a whole bunch of other important applications that are clear indications of not being a spy app.
Yeah, well, what basically triggered the it's a spy app was it was just something that looked weird that they hadn't seen before. You're correct in that it doesn't have very good cover. Like if it's got nothing but encrypted stuff and there's no app store, it does look pretty bad. I'm in discussions with Al Jazeera about whether to add the Google Play Store and allow people to modify the phone and make it look more normal. I'm very much against that because I think if people modify things, then they will make it insecure because that's what people do. Whereas they want their reporters to actually use the phone, and if it doesn't have, like Angry Birds on it, then, the reporter will be like, well, I could use the secure phone or I could use my regular phone, which has Angry Birds. So yeah, like there's some discussions over that, you're right. I think as a baseline for a hacker that wants to use this as a platform to build their own version of a secure phone, it's pretty good. It gets you somewhere reasonable as a baseline that you can then build on to address whichever issues you're most concerned with. Making it compliant with this is not a secure phone, not like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that's possible. So yeah, like, as I said, that could happen with the actual devices that get delivered to them because they're the customer and they want that. But I've gone for the bare minimum for the public release.
Thank you, Greg, if that is your real name.
Actually, it's Thaddeus, but don't tell anyone.
So when you panic the kernel, say you put in the USB cable, does that then enable cold boot attacks? Because then you can no longer start erasing stuff?
In theory, yes, but they would have to cold it, like they'd have to make it cold first. It's not perfect, but I don't know how to do things like what most of the x86 distributions do, like Tails and Liberty Linux. The way that they enable cold boot prevention is they use memtest 86, which basically wipes RAM as it goes. So they do a kernel exec, like kexec to a memtest, and then that runs through and wipes RAM before it shuts down. I do not know how to do that on ARM. If someone wants to figure that out, and then I will add the patch to that, and it would defeat that attack as well. That is a thing I would like to have, but it would require a lot more like Linux kernel development and ARM development experience than I have, particularly within the time frame that this project had to become operational. So I just went with panic, because I figure the odds are that someone's going to see it, they're going to plug in their debug cable, the phone's going to panic, and they're going to go, oh shit, I better try something else now. That's the hope, and it's only going to work as long as no one sees the slide deck or this video and doesn't know about it. So don't tell anyone.
Thank you. And a follow-up question, say the reporters, they've written a long thing on their computer that they want to transmit back. Is there a way for them to get it to go through the phone, given that you can't plug it in?
No, currently not. But developing a secure computer would be another thing. Like, so far, the stuff that they basically wanted was they wanted a secure communications platform for calling back to the head office and for doing email work remotely, but not for developing or basically writing and submitting stories. They also are very upset that the camera doesn't work, and they don't understand why the camera shouldn't work, because cameras take pictures of things, and that's bad. But, you know, they're reporters, what do they know?
Yeah, so my question is, what are your plans for updates or patches or making sure you get patches from CyanogenMod Mod?
Basically, because there is likely to be an ongoing contract for this, I am going to continue working on it, particularly if there's interest from the community and people like start getting involved with it, then it will be a lot easier. Otherwise, it will die on the vine. But for now, you can get a Nexus 5, you can load up Cryptogen Mod and add dark matter. What you can also do is you could take a stock Cyanogen mod phone. You will have to add XTS to the kernel because that's a requirement for TrueCrypt, and it's not there by default, which is unfortunate. But otherwise, dark matter by itself would work on a stock Cyanogen mod phone, which is something I would like to get to. Like, I'd like to get to that state. So if they would add XTS into their default kernel, then dark matter would work out of the box on their devices, and you would have pretty much all of those protections just on a standard Cyanogen mod phone, which would be pretty good. Like, I would like dark matter to be in the Play Store at some point, but right now it's basically a 300-line shell script and a Java GUI. So I don't think that's going to be accepted, and it also requires root because it does mounts and unmounts, which, you know, I would like it not to require those things because I want to get rid of the SU binary completely, but that is not possible at this time. But yeah, like, dark matter should be the thing that you can use regardless of whether Cryptogen Mod survives or not. So dark matter, good. Cryptogen Mod plus dark matter, better. But yeah, dark matter, good by itself.